Welcome to Great Question. I'm your host, Alex Fleming, spellcaster and podcaster and game designer. And with me today in the Inner Sanctum is my good friend, wrestler, comedian, podcaster extraordinaire, Lawson Leong. Lawson, how you doing, man?
I love that intro that you called me a wrestler first. It's the first time I've ever been introduced that way.
Really?
I'm very excited about it.
So
I'm doing great.
I'm glad to hear it. If you have listened to this show before, which there are ostensibly people out there who have, in the many years ago, you probably heard Lawson's voice before, or you're familiar. If you know me, probably know Lawson also. But for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, Lawson, do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit? Tell them what you're all about.
Well, so I've been a comedian for over a decade. Holy shit, that's crazy. And also, I've known Alex for like 8 or 9 years.
Something like that.
We've been boys, and so I was doing stand up for about a decade, and then after around my 10-year anniversary, I started a pro wrestling organization with my friend Benel. And we co-own essentially a wrestling company with a comedic slant on it called Brooklyn Battle Comedy now. So it's basically like it's a wrestling company run by comedians. So it's like comedy, wrestling, and then all that stuff. And we're in the middle of starting our first project right now, which is Brooklyn Battle Comedy. We make movies, and we have like an Indiegogo you can find on brooklynbattlecomedy.com.
Let's
our website,
battlecomedy.com, if I want to check that out.
Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're making a movie that is a mockumentary about us trying to make the greatest cinematic pro wrestling match of all time. It is in the same vein as like Best in Show or like that type of deal. What we do in the shadows, you know.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, that's what I've been up to. But other than all that, though, I've also been really into games and game design as Alex has now switched paths, I guess you'd say, right, Alex?
Sure. I'm multi-classing, how I'd like to put it.
Yeah.
I am definitely pursuing the other class. Well, it's also interesting, Lawson, since wrestling is a game, right? It's a competition. It's a match, right? You are now a player in this game. Are you not?
Yeah, it's a medium of storytelling. If I could put it in the way that makes it sound as less dumb as possible.
Yeah, and you're definitely gonna.
Because wrestling is kind of dumb, but I love it.
But that's fine. Video games are kind of dumb too, you know. Games is kind of dumb. But what's important is that it's fun and it's entertaining, and it seems like so I just wanted to say I'm a complete newbie when it comes to wrestling. I really don't know much, so definitely you can talk to me like a complete idiot when it comes to explaining the wrestling stuff. I know like heel and babyface, and that's it. Yes,
heels are bad guys. Babyfaces are good guys. Yeah.
So you're channeling your comedy into this wrestling. You've got an Indiegogo for a movie. I love that you're making a mockumentary. Those are so much fun, and I feel like there can be an infinite number of them, and I would watch them all.
Yeah, the script is really good. We have like a real crack team, and we have like real wrestlers in the thing also. We're working with actual wrestlers. Then me and Benel are comics, and Hannah Harkness, who's also a comedian, wrote the script. And she did a really great job. So, but
would you say it's like 50-50 comedy wrestling, or how would you split it?
The movie is like 95 comedy. It's mostly a series of like sketches and scenes, and then the big climax will be like an actual what they call cinematic matches. Because just to give us a little bit of nerd background on this, so basically, since COVID hit. Wrestling it's been harder to like have fans and stuff, and having all the wrestlers even congregate, it's like a whole thing.
You gotta touch
so it's become you gotta like be shirtless and grab each other and throw each other around. It's like, so what a lot of companies have done is they've created cinematic matches, which are like pro wrestling matches filmed like a movie. And this isn't brand new just from COVID, but it is like because COVID hit, it's become way more prevalent. And so we're kind of undercutting and mocking that idea a little bit, honestly, with
the idea of the cinematic match.
Yeah, a little bit, because they're kind of it was like the new thing to do because of COVID, and then it became overdone, and like now it's becoming a little hack, and so we're making the greatest cinematic match of all time.
Oh, I love it.
So we're kind of ripping on them. But yeah,
that's awesome. Do you have like a trailer or something on the Indiegogo that I can check out?
There is a trailer, actually. Yeah, actually, I will probably send you the link for it to put in the description or whatever.
Please do that. And this is going to be on YouTube too, so we can people will be able to just zip on over and check it out. In fact, you could pause
absolutely
and then do that if you wanted to, listener. Okay, welcome back.
Yeah.
Welcome back from the sick trailer. So wrestling, and then Lawson, you're starting to talk a little bit about games. So we've been playing games together, specifically tabletop RPGs, for quite some time, and we were playing collectible card games even before that. I'm trying to even think, like, what were the first games that we played besides like hanging out with comedy?
So we played the D&D game that Benel ran.
Yes.
I feel like that's the first.
That game is monumental. It's just a towering moment in my life.
Yeah, it's infamous, to say the least, I think.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, because if this is a show where I'm going to talk about games and we're going to talk about our experiences, then listeners are going to have to learn about the epic Benel game, and because I'm going to use it as a metaphor for a lot of stuff, probably.
Yeah, it was epic, especially for me. It was my first D&D game, as well as other friends of ours, Maurice and Sam's. All of us were new, but you had played before, so I mean, as a high schooler though, right?
Yeah, I haven't really talked about my D&D history yet. But briefly, I played 2nd edition in middle school first. I was a DM for a couple sessions, and it was just very hard, because we were like 13, and it was difficult to arrange transportation or play anything regularly. So that was my intro. And then in high school, we talked a lot about playing 3rd edition, but I honestly couldn't tell you if I played. I made a character, and I know my friends played, but I didn't usually hang out with them that much.
Right.
And then I slept on D&D for years and years and years. When I got to college, I'm still very shameful about this, but I definitely judged the D&D players. I was like, no, I'm trying to reinvent myself, and I'm an actor now. I'm gonna not do that. And then, of course, a bunch of people that I ended up meeting through comedy and through like improv and sketch stuff, they started playing 4th edition, and they were like, hey, do you want to play? And that was the first time I'd played in years. And then fast forward, we get to Benel saying, hey, there's a new edition of D&D coming out. Do you want to play? I got a crew. It's 5th edition. And it seemed like everything was right. The stars were aligning. It was a throwback to more sort of the feel of 3rd and in a lot of ways, at least in like the classes and the player's handbook and all that stuff. And we started playing, and it was it was a big homecoming moment for me in a lot of ways. It's very validating.
I mean, so because me, Sam, and Marie showed up as newbies to this game that was run by Benel, had other friend Jared Reed, and then also Rob Moxley, another comic.
Yeah.
And eventually Rob and Jared had to leave, and essentially also Ryan Crawford was also the other new player. I almost forgot about that. Mm-hmm. So Ryan, it's funny. Crawford's probably my favorite person I ever played D&D with, who barely ever played. Like he would be at like every 3rd session, but he was like the most fun character because he was like a rogue. He's also Crawford. He's hilarious.
Yeah, but he's a funny comic, and he wasn't invested that much in the game, so he was just having fun.
Yeah, in like a real fun, interesting way though. Like so. But then so basically Crawford, Rob Moxley, and Jarrett all left, and they. I mean, it wasn't a direct replacement, but then you came in, and David Piccolomini, and that became the crew for the back half of that game.
We played for like a year, right? I want to say
I think so. Yeah.
Like either every week or every other week for a year.
I think so because I think the whole campaign was almost 2 years. So I think, yeah.
And I came in late.
Yeah, I think you came in like almost halfway through.
Did not realize that. That's funny. I remember moving Robert into his apartment, and then we like sat down and played a session right after that. You remember that game?
I do remember that. Yeah.
So, do you see a connection between Dungeons and Dragons and wrestling? Because I feel like I see a lot of.
So there's a pro wrestler in AEW. So AEW is All Elite Wrestling. It's the new American pro wrestling company started up last year. And there's a wrestler on there named Brandon Cutler, who is my boy for life, unless like he does something bad. But he's a huge Dungeons and Dragons player. He literally comes out. His gimmick is that he's a D&D player. Literally, he comes out with a robe with the 5 dragon heads like Tiamat, that he calls like the robe of Tiamat, and he takes a big D20 and he rolls it on the stage for the camera to see, and it's like, oh, that determines like whether or not maybe he's gonna win and how his luck is gonna be. And he watches Critical Role and all that, and him and Mercer have like gone back and forth on Twitter or whatever. So anyway, he's like the most like direct parallel, but then also like me and Benel were both now started this wrestling company, and we both play D&D and stuff. And yeah, I think there's there's obviously the very niche and nerd dumb cultures around them. But also at the same time that Critical Role raised like all the absurd amount of money that they raised for their cartoon, the time that All Elite Wrestling pulled out their big first show as well, and like watershed moments in the as you can say that happened like in the same time. There's a little bit of fan crossover there, so like at the same time that like All Elite Wrestling, like they sold out like their show in like seconds or whatever,
right?
Like this record-breaking watershed moment for the industry, and then at the same time, Critical Role set some sort of record for all the money that they raised to fund their cartoons. So there were like these two nerd like genre watershed industry moments, you could say.
Yeah, these simultaneous crowdfunding campaigns. Is that it?
Essentially, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I feel like watching Critical Role or these D&D streams where you're watching people play characters. It feels kind of, not that I know that much about what watching wrestling feels like, but I imagine it feels kind of like watching wrestling, where there's these characters and they have kind of various power rankings relative to each other, and you have certain favorites and you want to see them do well. And except D&D is a little bit more, it's more co-op, whereas the wrestling is more, we're fighting amongst each other.
That's a great comparison and point, actually, because I mean the major difference is that in D&D you're usually a cohesive party and you're all trying to win, you're all trying to advance the story and complete quests and do all that. Whereas in wrestling we're all playing these different characters, and a lot of times we're mostly pitted against each other. I say we. I'm not like a real wrestler. I feel a little. I have a little bit of imposter syndrome talking about it like this, but I just started training.
A wrestling writer, then? I mean,
yeah, I'm more of a producer now, and
okay.
I've done it a couple times.
Well, you started a wrestling company, is why.
I did. That's true. Yeah. I'm an EVP though. I'm an EVP. I'm a suit. That doesn't wear a suit.
Oh, I should have known.
Yeah, I'm a suit now, even though I don't wear a suit. Vanilla wears a suit. He's living the gimmick.
We'll have Vanilla on in the future show to talk about it.
yeah. I'm the EVP that goes around in a Hawaiian shirt with a baseball cap, making sure everyone has refreshments. But
you're just one of the guys.
I'm just one of the guys. Just one of the talent. But yeah, no, it is like in wrestling, like the storytelling is a very much character. It's all PvP. It's an arena. It's an arena. It's, you know what it is? It's like those arena style games. Essentially, those PvP arena games.
Yeah, like a MOBA.
What they do. Yeah. Right. It's like that's what pro wrestling is essentially.
You have different hero characters. They have different supers. They have different flavors.
Yep. Yeah. Different moves. Some are good guys. Some are bad guys. You know.
Okay. So you've got your wrestling company. You're making a wrestling movie. Do you think about the design of the wrestling matches much, or is it more from a narrative perspective?
It's definitely more from a narrative perspective.
Okay.
Like when you plot out a match and the beats of it and all that, which again I've only done a couple times, but
I'm making my first video game, Lawson. We're all fighting the impossible.
True. That is kind of the thing. We're all figuring this out together, right?
Yeah.
So like, you know, you've played video games for like your whole life, and I've watched wrestling my whole life, right?
Yeah.
So now it's like we're trying to employ, and also we are like, you know, for better or worse, the new generation of that, right? The people that we watched, they've. Look, man, we're millennials, right? It still counts. Even though Gen Z buries us on Twitter, it's fine. We're the inheritors of, like, you know, all the stuff that we watched, right?
Yeah.
And now we're trying to use it to inform our new creative pursuits. So, yeah.
Well, I don't know how to segue this, but we talked a little bit before the show about, you know, I want to talk about games stuff, and I'm trying to still figure out like how to combine my passion for games and making games and playing games with comedy and being a creative person and all this stuff. And so we were talking a little bit about, you know, what you wanted to bring up here. So I'll just go ahead and brute force it and put this podcast on rails with no choices. Let's talk about player choice a little bit. Yeah, this is a big question. So we are part of a D&D community, shout out to the Sloth Guild, where we've been co-DMing with Jared Regal, and a couple of other new DMs in a shared world, and it's been quite an experience. And I think one of the things that led me to starting to do this podcast again is we've been talking a lot about our game design as game masters, as dungeon masters for this game, and I consume a lot of D&D YouTube, or at least I did until I started producing this again. There's a lot of questions. I recognize I failed to save on this segue, but how do you want to start talking about player stuff? Do you want to talk about tabletop RPGs? Do you want to talk about video games in general? What's our entry point here?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm definitely approaching more from like the tabletop thing because, you know, the wrestling stuff in Brooklyn Battle Comedy is definitely the major project I've been undertaking. But I've been really getting into this last year of running this West Marches style D&D game with Alex and Jared Regal. And
give the 2-sentence version of what West Marches style means.
West Marches style is a style of D&D that incorporates exploration and a bit of a hex crawl into as a party explores like a very unforgiving wilderness where part of the appeal is not just finding what's out there, but actually exploring what even the terrain is out there in general. And a lot of, you know, random encounters, and then essentially it's a player-driven, player-motivated style of play, where the players are like, I want to go here, explore this place on the map and all that stuff. So
as opposed to
as opposed to a more narrative style.
Yeah.
Like you drop the party in a city and the whole city they already know where everything is. Like, oh, go here and do this and
there's a monster in the room already. If I wanted to be uncharitable, I would call it more the modern Mercer style, but I don't want to be.
I mean, there's definitely something to that. I mean, the Mercer effect does happen. I mean, I think it's kind of unfortunate that he's been labeled with this term, but also, he also raised like millions of dollars. So
the first D&D other than Gary Gygax.
Other than Gary, I mean, yeah. I mean, at this point, that's what I was saying to, I think, Sam, which is like, or even Vanilla, is like, listen, Matt Mercer is the most successful Dungeon Master in history, and it's, I mean, not really close. I mean, I guess if you want to weigh what Gary Gygax, influence style, like his influence on the genre, but they raised like millions of dollars.
Yeah.
To fund a cartoon.
It depends on how you define successful, though, right?
True. I mean, influential, exposing the game, spreading the appeal of the game.
Because I'm sure if I went to Gen Con more or to like tournament play, there'd be someone hopefully will show up in the comments and be like, actually, these 5 people with their tables did a lot more within the community. But we're talking about like appealing to a broader audience here, right? Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's definitely. I'm not like a historian by any means on that, but so I'm sure that like there's definitely an argument to be made for Gary Gygax and other people probably, but at least definitely in the modern era, I think it's undoubtable. And with the 5th edition onwards, he's by far the most influential.
So what made you think about what made you want to talk about player choice stuff?
Right. So back to so it made me interested because player choice and player motivation. Because the whole thing with the West Marches style is that the players have like so much choice. It's all a sandbox, right? They have like almost infinite choice, and that like I realized having run this for a while, it's almost like the graph of choice and motivation is not like directly aligned. At some point it splits off because it's almost like when you can kind of do anything in the world, it kind of becomes hard to. It's the paralysis of choice, right? And it becomes hard to get motivated to do anything. And I've definitely experienced some of that. I think running the Waste, and that's why I've had to incorporate more A to B quest things. Could just said quests, but
it has felt more narrative as it has gone along. But I do think there's something to be said there that this isn't a binary too. That there's a spectrum of choice of the number of choices, number of possibilities, and that over time, a game that is set up in one way can turn into a different sort of game because of the pressures that are there. It's games are systems. I think about this with politics a lot, but it's like it's a system. Just creating a system and maintaining that system are 2 different forces, and you have to apply different techniques sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, total tangent. Player choice in the Waste Marches. I don't know. What are you thinking about all this?
Well, so I just find it interesting, like because now I run the index card game that you play in, Alex, and you talked about this on one of the recent episodes when you rebooted this, I think, a little bit. And I was because one of the things that I employed. So index card RPG is kind of like a hacked up version of 5th edition, which is more. It's rules lighter, and it's very much based on like equipment and stuff.
I described it as a low resolution tabletop RPG to someone at GDC, and she was like, "What do you mean low resolution? What?" And I was like, "Mechanically low resolution."
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, and I love it. But I found that like it's interesting because I'm running the game that I'm running there. That's very different than the Waste Marches one, in that it is very. I mean, I provide a little bit of a sandbox, but it is very more point to point, and that's I'm just finding it interesting comparing the player like choices with how much they're motivated to go and do stuff in that type of world.
Yeah, it's interesting being a player in that world, because I feel like we've had conversations where it's been like, players are just so scared to do anything. Why won't they adventure and put their precious characters at risk? And then, of course, the tables are turned, and I'm like, no, if I go anywhere, I might die. So it's interesting, because I feel like there is such a delicate balance there. It's all about the clues that you give to the player that have sort of a metagame narrative, like meta information of like, this will be hard, this will be easy to like. There's that game information you need to pass along, but then there's the narrative reality of it. I feel like video games do this kind of stuff really well. I'm gonna just tangent with this because I've been playing this roguelike game a lot, and it's a very traditional sort of platformer game. You start at point A, you have to get to point B, right? But there's 3 different strategies that you can use. You can try to kill lots of people, and you get like loot from that makes you stronger. Or you and you can try to do that like close up, or you can try to do it at range. And there's like 2 different ways to invest in that. Or you can just focus on just getting to the other side and not even worry about attacking. And it's possible to play the entire game just speed running and being defensive. And so video games, I feel like, do this really well, where they are just like, here are your choices. Here are your paths. They are discrete. We're communicating to you that they are in a game, that you can choose A, B, or C. And then there's going to be consequences based on that. But I feel like it's a lot harder in tabletop games when you're trying to have things be more narrative, when you are trying to let them be player-driven.
Oh, Alex, I can't hear you.
Oh, how long have I been out? Can you hear me?
I hear you now. Did you mute?
I hit the mute button on accident. How long have I been muted?
Okay. Like 10 seconds.
Okay. It's not my choice to be muted. It was something that the RNG thrust upon me.
So you're talking about you can choose to like just skip over and just get to the other side.
Saying in contrast from a tabletop game to a video game. In a video game, it's very like a box appears. It says choose A, B, or C, or like usually you have the choice when you go up to an NPC of like, 3 dialogue options. Do you want to be aggressive? Do you want to be nice? Do you want to be do you want to steal stuff from them? Whatever the different paths are. But in a tabletop RPG, you do have, if you're trying to make it be more organic, more just part of the story, either you can present way too many options because you can do anything that your character would want to do, or it can be very difficult to make it clear like what the choices are and what the consequences are for that. So.
Yeah, I think information is a huge part of this, and I think this is actually one of the things I struggle with the most. I feel like is like because in video games, like players just get information that they're gonna need to have, but in a tabletop RPG, there's definitely the sense of like the players need to maybe earn information, and I've been kind of moving away from that more because I did that a lot with the Waste Marches game, and I found it unsatisfying in a lot of ways.
Isn't that kind
and
of?
So now yeah.
Isn't that kind of the mechanic of exploration? Is earned information in some ways?
I mean, yeah, it was good early on, I think, in a lot of ways, but then it was like, I think maybe I did too much of it. I think I layered too much, of that into the fabric of it.
What effect?
And here it's.
What effects do you?
What's that?
What effects did that have when you went overboard on the earned information?
I mean, I felt like I was just like discouraging players, and they wouldn't like when they wouldn't dig all the way, then it was like then they would just get discouraged and then like give up instead of pursuing forward sometimes, because they weren't being like properly incentivized. I think that's why I think again like that comes with the motivation, right? So, maybe I wasn't properly motivating them to find it either. Yeah, that's. I mean, I definitely think a big part of it was how, was stuff that I was doing. Yeah, so as I was saying, I was talking about how, so the, in the index card game, I feel like I've been better at, I feel like, and you can tell me this because you've played in both the games, I feel like I've done a better job at limiting player choice, but in a way that's manageable, and also providing more like motivation out there. Because the other thing is, the Waste game was in 5th edition, and I was doing it very like rules is raw type of deal, right? Just to do it. And the thing is, it's like, okay, all the people, there's so many videos out there about like, why are my players murder hobos? And it's like, well, everything they run into has like a floating XP value over its head. It might as well be a bullseye that says "kill me."
Yeah.
So, and I try to like, I would give like XP for diplomacy and stuff too. But I feel like within 5e, it's just so, and in a lot of ways, tied to D&D proper, it's just so, it's so tied to murder a bunch of things. And it's hard to get away from that. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because they are just different sorts of video games. If I were to think of this in a video game context. Like, the murder hobo is kind of like, I just want to play a roguelike, almost, in my opinion. It's like, I want to dungeon delve, I want to use my abilities in a way that forces me to have to use strategy and maximize the value of them, and I want just a lot of adventure and combat, versus when you start talking to people, when you have to start considering the reality of your universe as more than XP to be had, it's a whole different experience in a lot of ways. I feel like what 5th edition is trying to do when it's done best is to synthesize a lot of that. But it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I do like 5e, I should say. I think it's really well designed in a lot of ways. But I'm just learning so much from watching seeing other like games designed that are different than its, and running ones as well. And then also like comparing it to like, because like, yeah, tabletop RPGs, they're different than video games, but I think they still have like the themes of like player choice and motivation as like, the players buy into what like actually playing. And so I think it's really interesting how different systems go about that.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, there's player choice, but especially when you're at a tabletop game, you have to have a matchup between like designers and what they're trying to do with the system and the kinds of choices that are focused on, the kinds of choices that have meaning, versus what you are interested in doing as a player. Because I feel like if you do want to be a murder hobo, there should be a game for that. You can go play a video game, really, or if it's just about like being a murder hobo with friends. I would say that reminds me of the evil game that we play, the Black Dragon Syndicate. But if anything, I feel like that game has tended towards more like role play and exploration and world building in a way that I was not expecting at all. So it is hard to say.
Well, that's what's interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like what makes the Black Dragon Syndicate was it's the game that we Alex DMs that game, and I play in it with Jared Regal and some other friends, and we are evil, and that was the whole thing. It was just the whole pitch is like, we're gonna play a game where we're evil. And there's like videos out there about like DMs talking about how they hate evil parties and all that. And I think, it's definitely it depends on, it's all contextual and it's not for everybody. But I think we've played D&D and we're experienced enough that what we're really getting out of this is that we don't have to feel bad about being murder hobos. And what I feel when I play that game in 5th edition is that's my most ambitious character. Like that guy, he's a schemer, as Joker would say.
Yeah, no. If anything, there's 100% player buy-in with all that. Everyone has their evil plots that they're working on.
Yeah.
And everyone's really tied into the world. There's that town that you guys want to go murder everyone in, and that's the most engagement with like what's been going on with the town and the thieves guilds there from any game I've played in there. And I played a hero-based game set in that town with you and some other people beforehand. So it's just interesting where the different hooks are,
Well, that's, I think, one of the things with the modern oh, go ahead, sorry.
It has to line up with what the players want, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about modern D&D is I think 5th edition, let's say, is like, it's very much the players becoming powerful superhumans eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of, again, I feel like it lends itself motivation-wise for me in this system to want to, like, quest for power and to use it for evil. Like, to be the cliche of absolute power, corrupting absolutely. Except I started corrupt, and I just want more power so I can own more things and be. And that's why I think it's really a stark contrast to me in how easily everyone in that game is motivated, like immediately.
Yeah. Like
Sam jumped in and immediately had like a whole thing.
Yeah,
like, it's just like
a whole backstory, but then also goals. It wasn't just I feel like the cliche is everyone's got a 15-page backstory about how their parents were murdered tragically and they grew up an orphan, and that's why they have no loved ones the DM could ever threaten. But forward thinking, it's either like I've already ascended to power for some reason at level 1 because my badass passed, or I don't care.
Yeah, and then it's like, there's nothing worse than when the DM tries to set up like a morality play and the players just ignore it in a game where they're not supposed to be evil, where we agreed to be heroes, but you don't care. And it's like, and I felt some of that sometimes in the waste. And not always. I think the players have generally been pretty good at that, but it's like, how much are they, sometimes it's like, are we really invested in this? Or are we doing this because this is the game Lawson set up and he's our friend and we're going to do the... Whereas in the Black Dragon Syndicate, it never feels that way. And like nothing we do ever feels like, oh, let's humor Alex and go. Like it's literally everything. We're driving everything in the game. And like to the point where we're, if anything, it's like I feel like sometimes we're stretching the world that you've put in front of us. Well, not too much usually, because we do a lot of dungeon delving. But
say more about that. I'm really curious, because I could talk and reply about my process with this game and how it's been different than other games that I've run, but I want to hear some more from you first.
Well, just like, so the one game where our tank wasn't there, and we were like, fuck, I don't know if we want to keep doing this dungeon without our tank.
Right.
And I was like, well, we could do, and I think this was Jared's idea, he's the smart, I'm the leader guy, Jared's a smart guy in this party. Jared's like, we got to recruit some, like, fucking animals. Go and find some brutes or something out there. And I was like, sure, let's go do that. And I was like, I wonder if Alex like has prep for this. But my character is going to want to go look for henchmen. And so I think, Alex, you did a great job of us finding. Essentially, we found a camp of bugbears and we recruited them. I fucking put on Hobgoblin face and recruited them to be... Again, I'm evil, so I don't care.
The more we talk about this podcast, about this.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. We're evil, and like, Jared's character is racist. He's actually made my character more racist by association. My character wasn't as racist coming into this, but
no, it's interesting to see that dynamic about how just you being an enabler to
Dr. Al has allowed racism to run rampant throughout the party.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm like me being the leader, but also it's not like I'm not racist. Like my character is evil, so it's not. He's not going to stand up against smart guys' racism. Like, just gonna, if anything, enable it is a good word. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I can get really topical here. I don't know if you saw the news about that like white gunman who was shooting people at the protest.
I did see that.
And the cops.
Yeah, I did see that.
Were like, hey, are you the guy? And he was like, nope. And they were like, okay. Instead of shooting him. But it's that same phenomenon where the people in power are not saying necessarily we are great. You, as the leader of the party, are not saying, I personally endorse this racist belief. But then at the end of the day, you let Dr. Al go around and shoot a bunch of people.
I murdered that gnome, and I just we just hate. So we're human supremacists, as you know, is easy to be. Well, here's the thing. Here's the beauty of this, and this is where Jared. I wish he was here. Thought he did such a great job with the RP. Yeah, because so the thing is, we start at level 1, so we're all variant humans. If you play 5e, this is no surprise. We're all variant humans. And then at one point, like a couple games ago, Jared was talking about, his character was talking about how I have this idea that like there's a type of human who's like the best race you could be. And it's some of us, I'm calling it the variant human. It's like, you're just born better than everybody. And it's like, it's so fucking funny because it's like, that's like canon in the rules. That the variant human is one of the best things you can start as. So, it's just funny RP that.
I feel like there's
obviously you have to be. Yeah.
It always is funny when you as a character in the game acknowledge the rule system that's influencing your world. It's like anytime someone's like, I feel like I have a number of slots that represent my magical energy or something.
Yeah. The best one that started this is when we were talking about how we're going to murder a whole town, which I'm so excited to do. It's amazing how excited I am to massacre a bunch of innocent gnomes. Jared, playing the smart character, his whole pitch was like, yeah, I think everyone in this world has an XP value attached. And if we, the more of them that we kill, the more experience we get, and we will get stronger. And I was like, that sounds weird, but you know what? Maybe you're honest. So we kill like 1 million farmers. Let's look at a bunch of experience, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you were saying about players just seeing XP numbers above every NPC's, every enemy's head.
Which makes sense if you're evil.
Yeah, because it's just recognizing the truth of the world in some way.
Yeah, it makes way more sense to look at it that way if you're evil too.
But that is
you just
because
don't give a shit.
That is how that world has been constructed.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, Alex, I assume when you set this game up, you didn't realize that like this town that you set up, which again we played as heroes and protected, now is kind of. I can't tell you how much I salivate at the mouth thinking about destroying it. Like every time we play this game, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go burn that town to the ground.
It's interesting.
Wait.
I like to, the pitch for the game was from the beginning, evil characters, right? That's say no more.
Yeah,
we've all heard about it. And I'm the sort of person who likes to think a lot about what is the message of the game that I'm playing. I'm making a game right now that is non-violent, where you clean up after violence. Like that is my personal project. And yet, there's something about this game where we've acknowledged this is a fantasy world where we are playing evil characters, and we know that this is evil. That in some ways makes it feel more okay to be, role-playing potential genocide or whatever.
Yeah.
In a way, I would feel more uncomfortable if I heard that this was like, like a popular streamed game or something. I don't know. I don't know how to deal with that question.
Well, I think a heavy part of it to me, I think, is that I think a huge part of this is trust within our community that we're playing with. Is that I think we all trust each other as people and as players. And when Jared, who is a black man, comes up with this racist character, this human supremacist, I think there's a certain trust that we have of that we're doing. There's a meta commentary to everything we're doing. Mm-hmm. And like my character is like from not to go into this whole backstory, but his motivation is that like it's from a crime family, and then he's trying to prove his dad wrong. Like he's clearly insecure about his name and all that, and it's like so. There's like
well, he lives under an alias.
Yeah, that's why I live. Yeah, that's why I have like I'm a charlatan, and I was given warlocks. I was given powers by a thing.
Careful, Lawson. This might be a reveal to other party members that your background is actually charlatan. I don't think you've actually said it out loud in the game before, except to me.
Maybe, but they all know that I have an alias.
That's true.
So
that's true.
I think that was the pilot of which was what kind of made this game kick off so beautifully. Was I was masquerading as a white mage, as like this frail. I'm just the white mage, guys. And then at the end of the game, I started murdering like one of our companions, an NPC. I started murdering an NPC, and I recruited everybody underneath me and revealed myself as like I'm trying to be this crime boss figure. And I was the charisma character. So I was like, you guys with me? Kill this guy. Let's split the treasure between us. And that was how the game kicked off, which was beautiful.
And you've really taken on that party leader role, for sure.
That's the other thing I wanted to do, because I usually always play support, and I like giving other people spotlight and not being in that role. So I was like, well, we're evil now. Like, everything I'm doing in this game is like stuff that I wouldn't do in other games. I was like, oh, we're evil. What if I just was the leader? Fuck it. I'll just try to go be the party leader. I'll make a warlock, high charisma. Yeah. I'll fucking lie to everybody and then be like, well, who's with me, though? And everybody went with it, so it was great.
And what's it like playing against your type? I mean, is that the buy-in for you as a player? Is that the motivation of like, cool, I'm playing a different... Because there's like a different game depending on what your role in the party is. You were playing the game of I want to trick my fellow players, and like I'm doing an RP game here, but then you're also doing the game of, I guess you're still doing support casting, even though you are a warlock.
Yeah, I mean I do. Yeah, I still, because I'm like that white mage warlock type of thing. So I am still playing support, in combat, right? I'm not like the glory. I'm not killing everybody with all that stuff, But I am, I wanted to try to take a different role, because I usually don't play party leader. And so I wanted to do something different, for sure.
So your support face, if I were to put it in.
Support face, roles, yeah.
It's just funny.
Yeah.
Usually a bard, right? I feel like that's kind of the
Usually, yeah. But I also, I'm taking, there's no, like in a lot of parties, it's like, we're all, there's the face man, but we're all equal. But I make it like everyone treats me like I'm the boss. And it would make Lawson uncomfortable to be in that position. But like, I've really put myself into this character who's like, why would this character need this so much? Oh, because his like dad was a crime boss and he wants to be better than him. So
do you think it's easier for you to put yourself in that position because it's an evil character?
100%, yeah. Like when I play paladins in other games, and that's like, usually like a face class, right? But I almost never want to be like the party leader role, even when I'm like a paladin.
Yeah, I mean, what does it even mean to be the party leader? It means you talk to the NPCs, you make the charisma checks, and I feel like
it also means
there's the bigger issue of like coming to party consensus on what you're going to do, on what is the player's choice of what we're doing this session or where the campaign is going to go.
Yeah, I mean, so the difference has been with my evil warlock party leader guy. Like when we're in the dungeon, it's like, oh, there's 2 doors here. I just tell like the other people like, okay, let's line up this way, and we'll hit the north door right there. And I just like I'm saying it as Lawson or whatever, but it's like kind of it's meta contextual that my character's kind of I'm using my own like tactics of like what I would do here, but I'm just like, but of course, like if there's ever a moment that everyone else in the party wanted to do something else, then we would. Like I wouldn't like actually hold authority over them, but it never really happens because everything we're doing, we're pretty much on the same page about what we're doing. So
it's interesting because I feel like in other games when I've been a player, I feel like there are certain players who like to take more of that role of being like, no, you see, this is the quest we should do because it's going to be best for us, and like keeping people on track, almost like a shepherd in some ways. I definitely see value in it. There is always that point where it can go overboard where it's like, okay, are we deciding what we want to do as a party, or is this just what you want to do?
Right.
But it's always a tough question.
I mean, I try to stay aware of that. I noticed there was a game recently where I was actually concerned if Paul was feeling like he wasn't getting enough say in what was going on. I didn't bring this up to him because I didn't want to make a mountain out of nothing. Mm-hmm. But he just seemed like he was being a little quiet, and I was like going around being the boss character, and I was like, I hope this is so yeah. I thought about bringing it up to him, but.
Well, we're definitely going to have all the members of the Black Dragon Syndicate on. Perhaps we'll do a roundtable show at some point where we talk about the party. That might be fun.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up because I definitely, have been talking to Paul. He's a newer player to 5th edition, and he has expressed some frustrations. And the thing with tabletop RPGs that is so different from a video game is that there are these social dynamics, and there's these things where I keep coming back to thinking about how every person at that table has their own desired playstyle, the things that they want to focus on, whether it's combat or RP or exploration or, the kinds of combat that they prefer, the kinds of RP that they prefer. And then on top of that, you have to also match that with the kind of game that the DM wants to be running, with the kind that they want to design.
It's a lot.
Yeah. What do you suggest for players who are struggling with this, or for dungeon masters, game masters who are working on games and trying to tackle this issue of player choice? Because what I've heard online, just dealing with the whole, well, we want to kill everything, everyone just sees an XP value there, is the sentiment I've seen online a lot is, well, give out XP for other stuff. Award XP for social encounters, for skill challenges, stuff like that. Do you think that's enough, or are there other suggestions you think?
I think that's a big part of it. Like Index Card RPG is like levelless, right? And so I've been employing though an XP system in that game because I found I basically just made like a little table of milestone triggers essentially, and it's like, so these are like the things people in this world, the characters can do to gain more XP. Like you get XP per session, because like showing up is, that's cool. And then also, you get more XP for doing like these other things, which are like these milestone things in the world, and it's like a pirate world. So like finding treasure, get a new ship, get new crew members, stuff like that. And because that to me that's like showing the players. I think that's also me as a DM communicating, like, these are like the things I put out here for you to do, and these are the things I think would be cool if you guys wanted to do. Like, I think, and I mean, if it seems cool to you, you can pursue any of them. And there's like a list of 10 things, so like you don't have to do, all of them. You could do one of them a lot. That's what you're into. And so that's like one of the, I was really thinking hard about. And the other thing that I found is like, and I did this with this game too, is writing a campaign pitch just to like set everyone's expectations as to what the world is, what you can expect out of me running it, And everyone who's playing this has gotten the same pitch, so they're thinking in the same way. I think that's been really helpful, just to get everybody on board as to what. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about how with Black Dragon Syndicate we had a very simple, clear, a very Klimple Seer message, which is very Klimple and Seer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah,
I really appreciated getting that pitch. I feel like Session Zeros can really help with some of this stuff. I wish we did them more often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I appreciated you doing that for Index Card RPG as well, was having Session Zeros, in addition to the pitch document, and just like spending all that time on setting up the context and the meta of the game that we're playing.
Right. Yeah, and I think just setting expectations is like really important with stuff like this, because there's so many factors, like you said. So what's been interesting to me about the run of the Index Card game is how much RP there's been. I find it's fun because it's the first full Index Card game I've really run, and the system is based. I mean, even the designer will tell you himself, Runehammer, that like he really. He's not an RP guy. He's much more like into the action and the delving and room to room stuff.
The crunch.
But I literally sent him an email actually, and I asked him. I was like, "Hey, so I'm starting up this new pirate campaign using your system. You got any advice or whatever?" And he just sent me a short email back, which is just like, "Get them with a big hook and then improvise." And so when I noticed the party. Which has like one of your friends is a new player, and I hadn't played with Matt before. I was like, I just want to see what. So as the more the role play started to come along, I just started letting it happen, just giving it space and all that. So
yeah,
I feel like I've done a good job with that. You obviously can speak to it better.
No, I do feel you've done a really good job with that. I don't know if this. Well, it sounds like this is your technique of just being a little bit more hands off once you like putting the effort into the initial hook, absolutely, and then just letting people run from there has definitely been my approach with Black Dragon Syndicate. Of like there was a map and a universe that I had made, and I had been homebrewing this world for some time to use for a campaign. And I tried setting different campaigns in it after I built all this stuff up, and then I said, screw it. I'm done writing the individual campaigns. I have a world and I have the broad strokes, but in terms of what you want to do adventuring, that's going to be entirely player-led. And so that's why you were able to go recruit some some bugbears, because I marked out who was in what territory, but I didn't put any specifics on it. And I feel like that improvisation is so important. It comes back to over prep. I feel like the times I give my players the least choices are usually the times I've done the most prep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you definitely need that foundation of like stuff to pull out of your ass when your players start improvising to know the world well enough to know the story and where it's leading, or at least of like the story of what's happened so far. But you definitely want to leave blank spots on the map. You definitely want to allow for things to happen organically.
Yeah. Because also I find that like that's the thing with the players. The more they feel like they're informing, players are here to, they're not here to like go through a plot a lot of times. I mean, they can be if that's what you all agree to, right? Mm-hmm. But they're here to push the story along. That's why I always enjoy more, even like in movies and shows and stuff and literature, like character-driven stories as opposed to like super plot-heavy stories. And even if they're really cool plots, it's like I can't get into it because It's like all the player pieces are just on a chessboard, and you're just moving them around. So
That's interesting.
So, but that's what, yeah, that's why I play that same idea with like games and tabletop RPGs for sure.
So would you say the difference between a D&D character and a wrestler in their own contextualized environment is that the D&D character has more agency over where the story is going?
Usually, unless that wrestler has gotten booking power because he is what we call a draw in the industry. Which Hulk Hogan actually wrote a lot of his own stories, in like the second half of his career, especially because he was such a big star that they gave him creative control essentially, and that's wrestlers can get that if they are big stars.
So once you hit level 20, then you can start.
Yeah, then the DM gives you plot point chips, and you're just like, the dragon doesn't attack today. Not till I get that sword. It is not going to attack.
Well, Lawson, I definitely want to keep talking to you about this stuff. I feel like we're just starting to really scratch the surface. But we have been talking for a little while, and I want to make sure that we get to some magic before we go. So
The Gathering?
No. Magic, Magic the Divination. That's it.
Ooh,
Magic the Divination.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like the old days.
We're definitely gonna have some D&D roundtables with some of our crew. Definitely have you back to talk about more of this stuff. But before we go, first I want to ask. Is there a deck you would like to use? I have here
Bring me the goddesses.
Ooh, okay, yeah. So not the traditional Rider-Waite deck that I've got, not the dog, the tarot deck, just advertising for future episodes. I'm doing great. I have this mythic tarot deck that's all Greek mythology. But then this is probably the biggest outlier of them, the Goddess Guidance Oracle cards.
Yeah.
So, awesome. I'm going to pull these out, start shuffling them. Lawson, what's on your mind? What do you want to ask these cards?
I mean, I hate to come at you out of left field, Alex, because we've been talking about a lot of things. We've been talking about wrestling, the tabletop, the games, and all that stuff. But I'm not going to lie to you. It's, quarantine has not been great. It's
real tough.
It's been a whole thing. So, obviously, people out there who are quarantining with your loved ones, provides its own unique challenge in relationships and such. Mm-hmm. But your boy is alone. So here's the thing. I guess I just want to know. I'm just curious. Am I gonna be able? I guess to what degree is quarantine? How is it go? How fucked am I in my romantic life because of quarantine? Because I definitely feel like it's been rough. It's been the isolation, fam.
Yeah. So let me just stop you right there real quick. In terms of framing your question, do you want to...
Sure, yeah.
Are you looking for advice on how to achieve the outcomes? Are you looking for just an answer of what to expect? Do you want something that's more actionable, or do you want something that's more foretelling?
I guess I was asking for foretelling, but now that I put it out there like that, I mean, actionable's better, isn't it? I'm trying to take my life back.
So I've been doing daily card reads. I haven't used this deck, but I've been using the Mythic deck. I've been putting on my Instagram stories. I'm not telling you what they mean. You got to tune into the show to find that out. But maybe a little teaser here and there. But
yeah.
I have been finding them really helpful from the perspective of like what should I be taking into account for my actions in order to achieve success? And like, what should I be taking into account each day? So I think it can be really helpful to, you got to frame your question, right? It's so important.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so, let me think about this more actionably, I guess. What steps should I take to pursue romantic life in a 2020 post-COVID quarantine world? Besides the obvious ones,
so I'm still shuffling, and I like to do this with anyone whose cards I'm reading. But I want to talk a little bit more. Like, what do you know off the top of your head? Like, what do you know you could? I mean, obviously you can be putting yourself out there, not in a physical way as much, but in like an online.
Yeah, I mean, there's the online dating, right? And it's well, I mean, so I've gone on a few dates. Here's backstory, Alex. I don't know if you remember this,
context.
But so I think the last time before you moved, I want to say one of the last tarot card readings you ever gave me was, I was asking a very similar question. Like this is years back, and the reading you gave me said that you find love. This is a real thing. You find love, right? Or I got into a relationship with my now ex-girlfriend, and it's the most significant relationship I've been in, right? And I always remember that it was within, it might have been 6 months, it might have been less time, honestly, but it was after that reading for sure.
Oh.
And so, me and her split. And then I'd gone on a few dates here and there, but since the vid has happened, it's been a dry lake. It's been rough. That's the thing. I don't know. I haven't. So I besides like online dating, right?
But then
that was always there.
You say the word online dating, it can mean so many things. There's mobile apps. There's
right
video chat dating.
Well, so I never got on Tinder is the thing. I'm an OkCupid Bumble guy.
Okay.
Right, those are the main two that I use. I just never got on Tinder, but so I don't know if I should be pursuing more different apps per se, or
maybe
I don't know.
It's because just thinking. Well, I'm about to draw the cards, but off the top of my head, it could say something like, be more persistent, or maybe be more patient. I mean, I feel like those are just like the kinds of advice that I would give you as a friend.
Right.
But let's see.
Yeah.
So I've been shuffling while you've been talking. I'm gonna draw the first card here. So, oh man, these goddess cards are so cool. Do you want to? Is it backwards for you? Can you read that?
It's I can't really read it. The shine on the thing.
The glare is too much.
Yeah.
Well, so this is Maeve. Goddess of cycles and rhythms. I've heard of her. I want to say she's Celtic. And the quote here before I go to the book is, honor the cycles of your body, energy levels, and emotions.
That's resonant. Yeah.
You want to say anything about how it's resonating before I go on?
Well, I mean, I think I look at my life as a series of cycles, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I don't know if other people do, but I definitely in a lot of ways see my own life as a series of building momentum and then getting cut off. In some ways. It's, pretty, but it's not even that, like, obviously COVID has cut off a lot of people's momentum. Right, I'm not. So it's not. But I definitely look. I'm always in pursuit of finding another way to find like momentum in my life, but it always seems to come back. It's a cliche. It always seems to come back when I'm not actually looking for it. Right, because I'm just content. I know that right now I am feeling not completely content, and that's why I'm seeking out. Like, Not that I'm seeking out the card specifically, but that's why I've been thinking it. That's why it's on my mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's not until I go through the cycle of it's cycling out of my mind that it will probably appear. I imagine, because that's always been the way it's been.
Well, let me give you some of the text verbatim, and then we'll unpack it. So,
sure.
The message from Maeve is: all of life is cyclical. The moon, the stars, and the very universe. Life inhales and then exhales again. So why should you be surprised or upset that you too have cycles? Just like what you were saying. There are times when you feel energized, awake, and alive. There are other times when you feel isolated and shy. Your body too goes through pronounced cycles and changes. Celebrate these rhythms and embrace them as the essence of your life, of the lifeblood that courses through you. So yeah, nothing is permanent.
And if you think about it, yeah, I like that a lot, because if you think about it, if your life wasn't cycling, then you'd just be like stale, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's weird when sometimes the staleness, like you're in part of the cycle that feels like you're stale, but yeah.
Are you thinking about like professional cycles, like growing cycles, or just all these things? I guess.
I think it's like the quote says, it's everything. Yeah. I think it's everything. I mean, I've had trouble having energy since the vid. I've been, it's harder to get energy, but.
Hold on. I'm looking here at various meanings of this card, and the first meaning is female gynecological changes. Starting menses or menopause are an issue for you. This deck is made mostly for women.
I love it.
I love it. Yes, you're going through a change. Thank you, producer. Producer
Was that Corey?
Off screen.
I didn't even hear it. It was hilarious.
But no, we're going through. I mean, we're all going through changes. But okay, so here's some more from the text. Make time to rest. Initiate steps to alleviate depression or lethargy. Take better care of your body. Seek support for dealing with emotional crises. Allow yourself to grieve or take time off. Know that this lull won't last forever. A doorway of opportunity has opened up, and you need to walk through it now. So a little bit about Maeve. A Celtic goddess, Maeve celebrates her femininity. Her sexual appetite is legendary, and she's been said to favor kings as her lover. Legend says that Maeve invoked labor pains on an army seeking to invade her land, and she demanded that the battle cease during her menstrual cycle. Call upon Maeve for relief from pain associated with feminine cycles, including menstruation, labor, delivery, and menopause.
I mean, I haven't talked to my gynecologist in a while, so I'll get on it.
Oh, no. We've successfully alienated all of the women.
No, what do you mean?
My producer's telling me.
Why?
No, I don't know. I mean, I see a lot of stuff going on in here.
I mean, I'm glad I chose this deck. This is very apropos. Yeah, I mean, it's... Is it weird that actually makes sense to me?
No, it's not weird. I used to think it was weird, and then I started doing tarot every day, and I'm like, oh, wait, no, this always clicks.
Yeah. I mean...
Well, you just project your own stuff onto the things you find. Right, yeah. And that's, I think, what
for
helps.
Sure.
Because these are always helpful pieces of wisdom, or just, like, different lenses of looking at the world.
Yeah.
I mean, as a friend, I think the messages about, like, don't worry about... You don't want to put relationships on a timetable. You want to worry about
it's the worst.
About the cycle, because you don't have control over when the universe is going to introduce you to someone. But you can take care of yourself. You can give yourself time to grieve. We're all going through a crisis. You can give yourself space to know that this will get better. You can also just focus on your own immediate emotional needs too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that'll completely make sense for sure.
That's what I took.
Yeah.
And then
it was good though just to talk about, because honestly I hadn't really talked about that. So it was good. It was good to put out there.
It's interesting though, of these goddesses that you could have gotten, you get the one associated with reproduction and feminine sexuality.
She had her sexual appetite, Alex, you said, was legendary.
Legendary, and she likes kings. We got the
she likes kings. Man, I mean, well, the thing was, I was the Prince of Park Slope, so maybe I need to kill a guy, my dad. I don't know.
Oh boy, sad.
Murder my dad. A little bit, yeah. Oedipus. Anyway, so.
But yeah.
Well, yeah. Oh, thank you so much for that, Alex. That was.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing this. Honor your own body cycles, energy levels, and emotions. Trust that there's going to be someone there. I can report that women are just as horny during COVID as men are.
I see it. I see it in the streets.
They're just as
I've seen it in the social medias.
As wanting for emotional intimacy as men are. We are all lonely.
For sure. Of course. Yeah.
Well, Lawson, thank you for being my first guest here. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Anything you want to say before we go? And then and we'll, of course, give you a chance to plug your movie and wrestling again.
Yeah, I mean, at BrooklynBattleComedy.com. You can follow us at Brooklyn Battle Comedy on Twitter, and to look out for all this stuff. We also have a YouTube channel, and you can see the little promo vid we put up there, as well as the matches that I have partaken in.
Yes.
They're on the YouTube channel.
Send me all that stuff, and we'll make sure to link it in the show description.
Yes. And also, love each other unconditionally and all that fun stuff.
Yes. That's the Lawson I know.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time. Really.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, this is great.
All right. Well,
I love you, buddy.
Love you. This has been Great Question. We'll be back with more Lawson, the Brooklyn Phoenix, Leong, Brooklyn Lion, Prince Park Slope, wrestler extraordinaire, wrestling suit extraordinaire. All that in future episodes. See you next time.